So in the complexity domain, in that complex part of the Cynefin Framework, why is stories and narrative so valuable?
Okay, one reason is that we're humans, and we're natural storytellers here. Stories have the ability to capture and make sense of a complex situation here. One of the things that we found out is that when you talk about big data is great, and we collect that through all of our IT systems here, and you get the who, you get the when, you kind of get the what, but what you don't get is the why. And that's what we have to capture, and stories are very, very good at helping capture the why. A term that Tricia Wang, who's an ethnographer, has coined is thick data. So I think what we're trying to suggest to people is that you need both big data and thick data if you want to get a good representation of what's really going on in your company or organization.
So, are we not immediately going to get pushback here though? Storytelling, really? Is that a way of really understanding what's going on in the organization? Are people not going to just tell stories that are maybe not accurate or their own interpretation of how things are happening?
Yeah, and that's perfectly valid. In fact, when I do storytelling sessions, I will tell people, if you want to tell a lie, it's okay. What I'm really interested in, we're interested in, is why did the person tell the story? So we're looking for the meaning behind the story. The term is kind of metadata. One of the phenomena of complex systems are patterns, hidden patterns. And we see that all around in the world here. We see birds flocking together, those really interesting formations. We see fish swarming here. We see fractal beaches, as we call it here. One of our aims is to kind of like learn from science, natural science, and what Mother Nature has done here. And we kind of do that with stories as well. We look for those hidden patterns behind the stories, and they actually emerge. We have the ability now to collect stories, convert them into quantitative data, and essentially visualize what stories look like. And if you think, Annie, that a set of stories is really a representation of your culture, my God, we have a way now of visualizing safety culture. How useful is that? So I can now actually take people through, show them a two-dimensional contour map. And this is what geologists do, by the way, like Josh. That's why Josh will really get this, because this is just geology being played out here. We can actually show patterns of the stories, contour maps, and we can point to kind of see, this is where your people are thinking. And the key thing is about is thinking, because with stories are lead indicators. They do talk about the past, for sure, so it's kind of lagging. But what they do is that they express attitudes. And if it's anything we know in this world of safety is that we want to move away from lag measures, particularly the accident ones, and move into more lead measures or current day measures here. Kind of like the idea of like moving away from scorecards into dashboards. And that's how you want to drive a car, right? You want to look at looking forward and looking through a dashboard and sensing where you are today. Stories gives that ability there. So if we create what we call a narrative landscape, put that in front of decision makers, the change intervention question changes now. It isn't kind of like, oh, should we do this, do that here? No, it's kind of like, where would you like more stories, fewer stories? And it's so much easier for a decision maker, well, like, I like these stories that are over here. How can we do more of those things here? Well, then let's look at what's constraining the system and influencing people to do that. This is hot principle number 3 that you're teaching here. Systems drive behavior. And I really like this is because the focus is not on people. And as we know, blame fixes nothing. We focus on the system here. And that's why I go back and say, behind every behavior, there's a good intention. We need you to understand and get the meaning of what that intention was all about.
Yeah, for sure. So if that's how we are seeing the world, it's not really about ultimately being in charge. It's more about vectoring in a different direction.
Yes, vector is a very good word. In fact, that's the differences between the order system and the complex system. In the idealistic order system, we do that, and I did that for many, many years. I would sit down with a group of C-suite people. We would craft an idealistic future state. We would create the mission, vision, value statement, take it out to the troops, and try to get the troops to buy in and align. right? And then you come back 6 months later and find everything had just crashed and burned. Why? Because the world changed. And all those idealistic roadmaps, linear roadmaps that I drew up, they all kind of fell apart within 2 months here. So was it me, was it them, or was it the process? I think we do realize that the approach was probably not the best for this changing world. In the complex domain, we do have direction. So when you think about a vector, we get two things. We get a heading, kind of like your north arrow idea, but we also get speed and velocity. And this is where we can take advantage of things of the feedback nature, where we can actually go viral. So instead of waiting a long time to change, things can go viral really quickly. And of course, we're seeing that in the media world, the world around us, political world, how fast things are changing. Things can go viral really quickly. Who's in control? Very good question, because sometimes when things go viral, nobody's in kind of control. So that's why we don't talk about control in the complex domain. We talk about influence. And how can we influence people? Because I am not a psychologist, I am not a psychiatrist here. It is so wrong for me to think that I can actually change somebody's behavior. The best thing I can do is nudge them, and this is taken from the world of behavioral economics. I want to nudge them by giving them choices, but they will make the choice. They're in control of their own behavior here. My job is to kind of make good choices that are in our heading direction that we want, and hopefully at a speed that gets us going somewhere. That can go like, yeah, I'll take choice A because that's where I want to go. We look at that. We don't measure. We monitor. How do we monitor? We look at the stories that are changing. That's our monitor. The dashboard is the stories, how they're shifting all the time. And two things can happen. One is that we're getting really good stories, so we want to amplify that, and let's do more of that. But we also gotta be careful because we don't quite kind of know where we're going. It's a bit of a trial and error. We may find like, holy smokes, we're getting unintended negative consequences we don't want here. We need to dampen or maybe abandon that. That was a mistake. Let's understand that. This is what we call safe to fail experiments. And the value of safe to fail experiments is that the cost of doing the experiments, a month or 2 months here, is quite low compared to the value of the learning that goes on. Ideal, this is what we want our learning teams to do. This is what they want to do, is create that value by bringing that learning back into the organization.
Yeah, excellent. So what are the implications for safety practice and for what we're doing in organizations around managing safety if we are to try and start adapting and using the complexity-based approaches, using Cynefin and stuff like that?
Good. Number one is realize that all the stuff that we've learned from the past, and safety has gone through an evolution. We don't want to throw that out and, we're going to start all over again. Safety differently is not starting over. Safety differently is saying, let's honor the past. But let's also appreciate that there are some myths and fallacies. And the one that we always talk about is Heinrich's pyramid. We've actually scientifically and mathematically proven that was a mistake. Fine, let's acknowledge that, let it go. But there's a lot of really good stuff that we want to carry forward and build on that. So I like to talk about evolution as opposed to transformation in that one here. We're just always getting better. One of the things we want to keep on doing is what we're doing now in the office domain. Best practices, that's very important here. We just got to make sure that the best practices continue to be the best practices and that we don't go like, oh, that was a myth. We kind of blew that. We need to always have to come back and revisit and check that. And we revisit that by going up to the complicated domain. So safety professionals' job really isn't to go looking for all the things that are going wrong. They should be looking for all the things that are going right. And if there are things going wrong here, we need to re-examine that. And one of the things we talked about yesterday, as we call here, is that I'd love to see the safety professionals out there looking for the safety heuristics. These are these little shortcut things that the experienced fellows are teaching the younger apprentices, that if you come across this situation and it's a bit of a dilemma, a bit of uncertainty here are one or two, three things that you can do. And we kind of know that these kind of work. If you do those things here, things will be okay and you won't have a failure here. That's the real learning. That's the nugget that somehow we need to really capture. Now there are times that we need to go like, okay, we need to really shift the whole paradigm. That's when you go into complex domain and you're entertained and you do these safe to fail experiments, trial and error, and you're looking for new solutions. What will emerge? I have no idea. In fact, we talk about anthropocomplexity as an approach, and the age that we're in is called cognitive complexity. I'm very aware that in a few years from now, who knows, there could be another age that we're not even aware of, some unknowable, some unimaginable, that will eventually emerge as well. All that we have to do, Andy, is keep our antenna up and keep on scanning. So early detection, check for weak signals, that's what we kind of promote when we do that.
Yeah, okay. It's funny, you're seeing a lot more people talking about storytelling,
Yes.
just tying back to what we were talking about earlier on, and I think a lot of people are starting to think this is about telling stories, and particularly leadership telling stories. Is that kind of missing the point, really, of what we're talking about here in terms of storytelling?
Yeah, I am a bit disappointed, where, again, the marketers and the consultants come along, and when for $1.99 or $199, you can take the quick fix where we can teach you, leader, how to tell stories. I think they're missing the boat. Storytelling, the essence of storytelling is there, which is great, but it's really not about telling stories, it's about leaders. And Dave Snowden has a really good quote, is that we really don't want leaders to tell stories. We want leaders to go out there and take actions that their people can tell stories about them. And hopefully those stories are going to be very positive, very encouraging. And as that spreads and stories spread, we have grapevines, we have water cooler talks, they spread. And as they spread here, that helps to change the culture, because that's what we want more stories of, here up there. Yeah, so let's do more listening as opposed to telling.
So ultimately we're more interested in hearing stories, collecting stories, understanding the stories, rather than it being about us telling the stories.
Correct, yeah.
Well, Gary, I think it was a really useful conversation, so thanks very much for coming to work with us here in Brisbane, and hopefully we'll see you again.
Yes, well, thank you for inviting me here. First time in Australia, and I hope it's one of many more.